So Coraline is in an awkward position right now because she thinks she's gotten home, but her parents are missing. And then Wybie shows up and really becomes the straw that breaks the camel's back. Seriously, all of Coraline's displaced anger gets directed at Wybie, and she kind of performs casual domestic violence towards the kid. Oh, and if you missed the last episode, I proved once and for all that Coraline is not in the real world after she went through the dark tunnel, you know, the one with all the toys and cobwebs. I mean, she thinks she's back in the real world. It looks like the real world, but it absolutely is not the real world because of this little cat squid toy right here. The devil really is in the details, because I've watched this movie hundreds of times and never noticed that until I went through her room frame by frame. But what's Coraline going to do now that she's all alone and getting more and more afraid? Let's talk about it. Hello, everybody! I'm McGann. This is the Fangirl, and after years and years of talking about Coraline, I had to finally break down and buy the movie on a digital format because it was taken off of HBO Max without any warning. So yeah, weird factoid for the Fangirl trivia. I didn't own a streamable version of Coraline until April 3rd, 2024, and I was only able to do that because of the kind support of my channel members, as well as some very sweet comments that left me tips. So thank you for your continued support and generosity. It really means a lot. Things have not been pretty on YouTube lately, and I'm just struggling and doing my best. Okay, I'm still really pumped up after my last video where I proved my theory true after 8 years of insisting I was right. So let's jump in with more renewed enthusiasm. Coraline just drug Wybie through her house looking for the button-eyed doll, but it was nowhere to be found. However, because Coraline was acting more and more erratic, Wybie ended up running out of the house screaming about how Coraline is crazy, and Coraline, apparently desperate to prove him right, chases Wybie down with her shoes in hand, trying to blame Wybie for everything. All because Wybie's the one that gave her the doll in the first place. And hey, we've been at this movie for a while. You all know that I'm on board for Wybie being a villainous type. But if the movie wants our mindsets to believe that, or even question it, don't make it so vague. Have Coraline call him out directly for being in cahoots with the beldam. However, Coraline demonstrates some ADHD focus levels here because no sooner does she finish yelling at Wybie than she notices the green VW Beetle and goes running after it, perkily calling out, "Mom! Dad!" And it does feel forced that she even looked in that direction because there was nothing to compel her to look behind her in that moment. But Coraline runs over to the car and her excited happy face shows us that she was really expecting to see her parents inside of that vehicle, as if they just pulled up to the house a few seconds ago. Sadly though, the car is empty and Coraline's face drops. However, the doors of the Beetle are unlocked for some reason, and Coraline finds a pink flip phone on the passenger seat, which has to be her mom's phone because Coraline hits a quick dial button and then murmurs to the universe for her dad to pick up the call. But it goes to voicemail, which has to reinforce a lot of panic in Coraline that her parents are truly missing with no way to find them. Although I do find it curious that this phone was left in the car, it still had enough of a charge to send an outgoing call, and the doors to the Beetle were unlocked. Now, granted, Mel didn't even lock the house door when she left to get groceries, so maybe she's just trusting and or careless like that? But all of these things together don't make sense. Even back in 2009, it was atypical to not have your phone somewhere close by. So why would she leave it in the car? Why would she leave the groceries on the table without putting them away? I mean, heck, if you come home and can't find your daughter, shouldn't your first move be to call the police with your cell phone? Since they've only been in the house for a few days, I really doubt that they have any kind of landline set up. But like we established in the last video, for those groceries to be sitting out with full-grown flies in them, Coraline's parents had to be missing for at least 22 days. And since the groceries weren't put away, the parents had to go missing almost immediately after Coraline entered the other world. Yet, this uncharged phone in the car still has power after being unplugged for nearly a month. And there was no boot up time. Coraline literally just picked up the phone and dialed. So the phone was on. Now this could just be a continuity error, but it screams not the real world to me. Which again, I accidentally proved in the last video, but I feel like the evidence is overwhelming if you look at the subtle clues. Even though a lot of people have not wanted to believe me about it over the years. Anyways, while Coraline is in the car looking concerned, we get a sudden cut to Miss Spink sewing an angel outfit for Angus the Scottish Terrier because his health is declining and he's expected to pass soon, which just kind of shows us the morbid mindset these ladies have. Although to be fair, I've known a lot of older ladies who are like that. My own grandmother has been fixated on her death for the last 40 years, and she talks about it constantly. It'll come up at every turn. Oh, I have to send my bills out as soon as I get them in case I die this month. Oh, you like I Love Lucy? You know she's dead, right? Or going through the newspaper every single day to see which of her friends have died. It's so weird to me. It really got in my head as a kid and messed me up. But while Miss Spink wraps up her knitting project, Miss Forcible is getting on her case about getting ready, to which Miss Spink has to tell her that they've lost their ride to the theater because Coraline's parents have gone missing. And again, all of this is surreal in how strange it is. Miss Forcible gets indignant and angry, exclaiming how they've waited months for those tickets and they can't walk 2 miles with Miss Spink's gammy legs. Okay, so sure, it's okay to be disappointed that your free transportation didn't work out, but even though Uber wasn't really a thing yet, taxis were. So there are obvious and easy solutions to this problem. Plus, in 2009, in a small town going only 2 miles, a taxi would have cost about $3 to $6 one way. It wasn't even expensive. Also, Miss Forcible and her chest bisons wandering around in undergarments. It's just so perfect for reasons I can't quite sensibly articulate. This woman gives no care that there's company over. She's just like, check out my big bazungas. I love it. But it's odd and upsetting to me that these old women are in this self-absorbed fog and aren't even a little bit worried by the fact that Coraline seems to have been abandoned. This back and forth with Spink and Forcible really feels more like 2 puppets interacting with each other rather than human beings seeing a child in need. And while it is an alternate universe, in the book, Coraline does call the police and say she's alone and her parents are missing, and the officer is like, so what? That has always bothered me, that no one is showing concern over the abandonment of a minor child who is elementary school aged. This is a baby! But Coraline gets tired of listening to this and she crosses her arm and clears her throat as an attempt to distract the ladies from their self-obsessing, and Miss Forcible walks over to a chest with 2 ladies etched on it. It has the words "Special Reserve," and the chest opens in a way that makes the 2 girls look like they've been beheaded. It's a very eerie vibe. And the interior of the chest shows 3 open-air candy dishes marked 1921, 1936, and 1960, which are presumably the years the candies were made. And again, as the flip phone helps to confirm, the movie Coraline was both released and set in 2009, which means unless Spink and Forcible are in their 80s, which I don't think they are, maybe late 60s or mid 70s, but they don't have that weathered up look of someone older than that, you know what I mean? Because I don't see a way where Spink and Forcible would be older than YB's grandmother, and she can barely walk by herself. So, who bought this candy in 1921? That should be before Spink and Forcible were ever even born. Even in 1936, these women would have been children who wouldn't think to save candy for decades like that. And my personal theory has always been that these years are to mark each year that a ghost child went missing, especially since the year 1960 is shown, and Wybie's aunt looks to be dressed from that era. But I also said that before noticing all the silhouettes in the Beldam's dining rooms, so these years might still relate to children being abducted, but we just can't know that they're the same ghost kids that we saw in the room behind the mirror. Who's to say there aren't a dozen other rooms like that too, with other ghost kids? Coraline could have just got randomly put in holding cell number 5 because it was closest. We don't know. Anyways, Spink is saying how they know just what Coraline needs as Forcible grabs the 1921 candy dish and brings it to the coffee table so that Spink can take her knitting needles and use them as dual pickaxes to pull out a green seeing stone. And I'm curious, do you think that stone was hiding in the candy, or was it made out of the candy? Because the taffy is a lot of different colors, but the stone is all green, and it's a very consistent green. So I think it's an object they hid inside of the candy, but there's no logical reason behind hiding it, or to have all the theatrics involved in chipping away at the old taffy. Like, just move the candy around. You don't need to spike it into dust. And if Spink and Forcible are not trapped in the other world, then who would be spying on them to ever want to take the seeing stone? So what's the motivation to hide it at all? And okay, I keep trying to compare and go, well, if we're in the real world, but I've already proven that we're in the other world right now. So the ladies have either hidden the stone because the beldam is watching them all the time, or they hid it from themselves because looking through it can mess up their grasp on reality. And frankly, at this stage in their lives, I think they're trapped in the other world and just along for the ride and going with things. Of course, this is all assuming that these two ladies aren't just puppets being controlled by the beldam, and they're giving her this stone so that Coraline has a false sense of security by having the seeing stone. I know some of you think I'm crazy here and going in loops, but seriously, watch Spider-Man Far From Home. Messing with your perception of reality is a very powerful tool, but Spink and Forcible seem to be essentially making motions without thinking them through. Spink uses her knitting needles to chopstick over the seeing stone to Coraline, and she just very casually says that, oh, these are good for bad things, while Forcible fights that they're good for lost things. And they explain nothing further while Coraline looks through the hole and everything appears normal. See, if you make two realities look different, then you can convince someone they're safe when they really aren't. Just like the people hooked up to the Matrix. They think they're living their lives in the 90s, they don't know that they're hooked up and being used as batteries. Same thing with Coraline. She doesn't know she's still in the other world, being drained as a food source. But while the ladies bicker between the seeing stone being for bad things or lost things, Coraline gets up and walks away, seeming to be unnoticed, and that's the end of today's scene. So let's check out some comments. Channel member Corey Noel thought that the doll might be its own form of magic, and that it's like the beldam's magic vessel in the real world because that specific sack doll body is cursed or something in that ballpark. And that's not a bad idea. There has to be some kind of logic to use that same doll body over and over again, because it would certainly be easier to get new materials and make a dozen dolls to kind of widen her net. But for some reason, the beldam is limited to this one doll. And maybe that's just how strong her magic is, and that's all that can withstand in the real world. Then Raven6565 brought up that the last time we discussed the black cat in the comment love section here, that it got them thinking that maybe the cat and the beldam are separate powerful entities, and that the cat might be the one controlling the ghost kids to, in some way, keep the beldam from becoming becoming more powerful than he is, which could work. I mean, at the end, when the kids are free and they visit Coraline's dream, isn't the cat right there with her when that happens? And we know he can slip around through portals and get almost anywhere in the other world. So he could have been quietly sitting in that dark room behind the mirror, and we'd never know if he didn't chime up. Raven's comment actually goes on a bit longer, but I'm running long myself here, so I'll let you guys stir up that conversation in these comments. Next, Red J. Lee is having a fun time thinking about the beldam sitting in the dark living room with growing disbelief that Coraline is trying to pull a push door so hard. And samesies. That girl destroyed a 150-year-old door handle because she doesn't know how knobs work. And that's just hilarious for me, especially since the movie takes the door very seriously and it's never called out in the film. The beldam's just in the dark going, man, I might be helping the human gene pool by removing this kid. And finally, that creative fairy asked, if Coraline figures out that she's trapped in the Limbo Pink Palace world, couldn't she just pick the door with a butter knife and escape? No, probably not. Because, for one, Coraline is going to be too terrified by the end of this movie to ever try and go near the beldam again. And I think that's the point of making her so afraid, so that even if she does figure something out, she won't dare to cross the beldam's path again. Because don't forget, the beldam's hand gets allegedly thwarted at the end of the film, but not the rest of her. But also don't forget that these portals change with the beldam's will. And when she doesn't want the tunnel to be open, it's just a brick wall. So Coraline only gets to do anything at the beldam's pleasure. And if the beldam is eating up Coraline's life in the Limbo Pink Palace world, then the beldam isn't going to let Coraline disrupt that by coming anywhere close to the exit. Thanks for the thoughts, guys. I might be overthinking it, but that's literally my job. And to any of my members here on YouTube, a huge bottom of my heart thank you for all of your help and support. If you would like to become a paid channel member, there is a link in the description below. Thanks again, guys. Love you. Well, family members, we're almost done, but I want to invite you to hang out with me in some other places. I'm on Twitter and Instagram as my own personal self, and I have a Facebook page too, but I mostly just post photos over there. And sometimes people say, hey McGann, I want to mail you something. How do I do that? Easy. Just click the About tab on my channel page, and my most current P.O. Box info will be right there. I also run another channel, The Family. It's really a hodgepodge channel where we might post anything. Oh yeah, and I also sell shirts and stickers and stuff with the Family and the Fangirl logos. If that is your cup of tea, I have a link in every description of every video. Finally, if you want to help out the Fangirl channel and make sure I'm putting out video essays for years to come, the best way you can help is by subscribing and watching more of my videos, whether they're new, old, whatever. Maybe even share one or two on social media, help spread the word. People who watch to the end of videos, like you, helps to tell the site, hey, this is a good video, we should recommend it to other people. So if you made it this far, leave me a comment of something like, hey, I made it to the end. Love ya. See you next time, family members. Bye.